Although I know throughout the recent years these stories have been overdone, however, I've been documenting my encounters with these beings for about 2 years now, and my experience is similar to those I've read in the past. It's becoming more and more unique as time goes on, and I need to share with somebody. I need advice because now I think they're invading my dreams, so I bring it here to No Sleep. Firstly, I want to note that while I do run a blog, nothing special, just fashion and beauty, I am in no way a writer. So I apologize if my story seems dull. As I've said before, to get it out and share it with someone who doesn't think I'm completely batty. But before reading this, I don't know if this is a fact or not, but I read that they won't visit you if you don't know about them. So this being said, and as a precaution, stop reading now if you don't want these horrifying things in your life. One last disclaimer. This is a very long first entry. I plan on doing updates if, and only if, anything else happens. But so you know, this may take a little bit to read. If you're still reading this, as I've stated earlier, these instances started close to 2.5 years ago, before I really even knew much about the black-eyed children. Or kids. I was bored one night and I was on my college campus late, studying for finals, so being the horror fanatic that I am, I began reading a certain internet site we all know and love and just hit random, and a story on the black-eyed kids encounter came up. At first, I laughed because like so many people I've seen on here, I immediately thought all of this black-eyed kids was a joke I was going to make out of this story. Well, to my surprise, the OP's story was so good, I became interested, intrigued even, and dove into my own research about these creepy little kids. At the time, it was much better than studying for my psychology exam. After what felt like only a few minutes, I just about jumped out of my skin when the school security guard poked his head in the computer lab and said, "Millie, it's closing time." All I could think was, holy fuck, it's 11 already? So I gathered up my belongings and started my walk to MIT Washington from Point Park's campus. Although it isn't a long walk, and one I made quite frequently, I always enjoyed roaming Pittsburgh Street at night. For a city, it was relatively safe, and nighttime walks were a major part of my routine. I loved the serenity of the city. Like every night, I enjoyed my walk over to Smithfield Street Bridge and headed up to the incline and strolled to my complex. It wasn't until I got to the block prior to my flat that I noticed two male children standing on the stairs that led up and down the mountain. Normally, I don't think anything of it. Tons of families lived up here who had young kids, but now it was pushing 11:30. So why would it appear to be 8-year-old and a preteen coming up the stairs? Surely they would have just used the incline. Perhaps they didn't know it shouldn't be out and didn't want to get caught on the main street. I shrugged it off and continued to my apartment, but as I passed them, I remember feeling as though if I was being stared at. I could feel their eyes burning into me. I didn't say much at the time, I was scared, but not being one to be wild about kids in general, I walked a little bit quicker in order to avoid them speaking to me. Once I got to my door and unlocked it, I peered behind me to see if the kids were still near the stairs, and they were just gone. I assumed that they went the other way, but I still felt like I was being watched. The rest of the evening was uneventful, and I watched some Archer with my roommate and fell asleep on my Lovesac beanbag in our living room near the window. Later, I was woken up by tapping on my window. Being that our flat was on the bottom floor and a busy street from college kids going to bars, I thought nothing of it and just went to my room and went back to bed. I am a noticeably early riser, usually wake up and awake by 5 a.m. every morning. This morning was the first time I had seen one. My bedroom was just below the ground and ran adjacent to an alley. I woke, flipped on my TV, and watched the news, and again felt like I was being watched. I looked up, and there he, the younger one, was just staring at me, emotionless with his big, black, void eyes. However, he wasn't speaking or even knocking, just observing. I quickly jumped from my bed, and then when I looked out the window again, he had vanished. At this point, I was sure it was just a dream due to all the reading I had done the prior night, and just shook it off and showered and continued my normal routine. This visit was in late March 2014. After this freak occurrence, I had no more encounters or even thoughts about the black-eyed kids. Even within the next months, I was slammed with schoolwork due to graduating that December. I was just mostly working on my photography portfolio and spending loads of time on campus studying and working as a teaching assistant. As I said, I love horror and spooky things, so on the rare occasion I do get the heebie-jeebies. It passes quite quickly. Therefore, the weird incident was far from my mind. That was until July 2015. Back in April of 2015, after graduating and my lease being up on the mountain, I moved into a new flat closer to my big girl job in Robinson Township and was living on my own. It wasn't a shabby place, but it was very small, only enough room for one person. My mom called it my crash pad for the weekend, considering at my parents' home I have a completely furnished flat, which I stayed in Friday night through Monday morning. However, I forget the exact date, but I do remember it was Wednesday in mid to late July. I was sitting at home having a cup of tea and reading one of my favorite novels. Like any other evening around 10 p.m. I decided to turn in since I had work in the morning, and no matter what time, I seemed to wake up around 5 a.m. Well, this particular morning, I was awakened by consistent knocking at my door around 2:30 a.m. Considering that my one neighbor was a bit of a party animal and a sex addict, he had a constant string of tweaker friends and women in and out of his flat of all hours of the night. So when I heard this banging, I just rolled over and assumed it was that they had the wrong door. However, it just got more persistent, louder, and almost demanding. I began to get frightened as I had never lived on my own before, and I'm quite a little lady. I can't really fight off an intruder, so I phoned my mom from my bathroom and told her what was happening, and she told me to phone the police. However, by this time I was off the phone with her and had myself collected. The knocking had stopped, and it was about 3:30, so I decided to fix myself a drink and head back to sleep. Nothing out of the ordinary happened the next day, and I just moved on from it. However, I did start thinking the black-eyed kids again, and what happened at my flat in the city over a year ago. A few months passed, and over Halloween holiday I stayed with my parents that weekend, as usual, and helped give out candy. Everything was back to normal, and the trick-or-treating was a neighborhood success. However, that evening I had the strangest dream. I dreamt that my dad and I were still giving out candy, but it was late and winding down. The dogs were still outside in case there were a few stragglers. In a dream, we heard a knock on our door, and my dad got it. I could remember him saying, note to my dad being a big tease, "Well, I can't give you candy, you don't have on a costume. So go play along and be a good cop." So to play along and be the good cop, I walk over to the door to intervene. That's the first time I heard their voices. Sharp as glass, crystal clear, very direct. The older one said, "Hi, we need to use your house phone to call our mom. We are lost. Can you please let us in?" At this point in the dream, I pushed past my dad and looked at the kids. They were both their heads tilted down so we couldn't see their faces, but I just knew they were the same ones I had seen on MT Washington well over a year prior. Before letting my dad answer them, I said to the young one, the one I'd seen peering through me at the window, "Show me your face." He turned his head at me and lightly smiled, showing no teeth, and staring at me, and I stared right back into those deep, dark pools. In the dream, I began to feel faint and passed out, and I woke up in my bed just like you do after you've had a dream about falling. I don't know why, but I peered out my window, and I had seen them, standing about a block from my parents' house, just looking into my bedroom. I drew the blinds, and when I looked at the clock, it was 4 a.m. So I just stayed awake and threw on the Parks and Rec to try and get my mind off what was happening. This was in October 2015. The next incident took place in my flat not even 1 month after this dream, in mid-November 2015. Much like the last dream, I suspected they visited. They started out by gently rapping on my flat's door around 3 a.m. This time, however, I decided to go take a look at my peephole. I figured it was or wasn't them. Whoever it was wouldn't know I was there, so no harm. That's when it got weird. Before I even got to the peephole, I heard a little voice. Not the same one in my dream, but still clear as glass. They say, "Please, miss, let me in. I've lost my brother and need to go somewhere. I need somewhere to stay for the night. It's very cold out here. Please let me in." My heart jumped into my throat, and I knew it was the younger one. I felt my hand going for the deadbolt when I stopped myself and looked out the peephole. There he was, but this time not even attempting to hide his face, just him standing there looking up at me. I slowly backed away and said nothing. I went back to my bed, though this followed in extreme feelings of dread and discomfort because I couldn't just stop thinking about his eyes. That's when the knocking started again, and it was persistent. But the pleas had stopped, and it went on for about an hour. I never did get back to sleep that night. However, it got worse when I got to work in the morning. I noticed tiny footprints in the snow around my doormat, so it was proof he was actually there. But what was more unsettling was the fact there was no footprints anywhere else, not even up or down the stairs that you had to take to get to my second floor flat. Now, I moved from the apartment, not because of this, mind you, I was saving a trip to Europe, because my parents offered to let me live almost rent-free in the flat located on the floor on top of their home. So now I'm relocated to Beaver, Pennsylvania. The commute to my job isn't the best, considering it's about half an hour away, but flat is much more cushy, and I have no rent monthly bills other than paying for my phone, internet, and cable. And I was excited to be able to now have some pets again. This leads me to my most recent encounter, which I had early this morning, April 15th, 2016. This morning I had another dream about the same younger black-eyed kid. They're not nearly as strange anymore, seeing as I have them weekly now. However, this one was strange for a number of reasons, especially due to what was happened after I awoke. So, the dream I was having started out as a normal dream, and then within the dream, I dreamt that I woke up and the younger one was in my room just staring at me while I was sleeping. But when I saw him, I asked, "Who let you in?" Before he could ask, I jerked awake around 3 a.m. and realized the sound of the gate on the front porch opening, and that was odd on its own. It's even stranger that my dog Raleigh wasn't barking. He's a hound, so he's loud to start with, and then really doesn't like strangers at the house. Needless to say, I went downstairs to have a look, and Raleigh was cowering, shaking, and whimpering on the landing, so I went down and helped him. Once he was okay, I looked out the window and didn't see anyone on the porch, so I just went back upstairs and proceeded to watch the news. However, when I got to the top of the stairs, I heard the gate again, but I just thought I was hearing things. Well, this morning I was talking to my dad. We have a community kitchen, kind of like a boarding house, and he told me around 4 when I went back upstairs that Rolly came into his dad's room and got in bed with him and started shaking and whimpering again. Although I will admit that I'm generally a skeptic and do not believe in things of this nature, I now believe these two things. However, they are very, very real. Though, I'm very confused as to why they keep finding me. In all the research I've done, they seem to be you only see them once kind of a deal. Could they want something other than the possibility to eat my soul? Should I try speaking to it more in my dreams or in the present? Has anyone dealt with these before? I just desperately want answers, so any information at this point would be really helpful. Again, if anything happens, I will update you all. I really do hope this is the last incident, though. This was a fairly recent encounter I had that reminded me of the Black-Eyed Children, and this subreddit that I explored a few years ago when I first read about this phenomenon. So right now, I'm on spring break, meaning that I went to my dad's for the week, and have almost nothing to do. So, late at night, I like to troll down the town, walking alone, Even if that does seem dangerous, I only have one friend here. Anyway, Sunday night I was out on the town alone and leaving a little pub I found on Main Street that sold the apple ale that I liked. It was around 1 a.m. So yeah, I was buzzed. 2 glasses and I wore a large black sweatshirt and dark jeans to fend off creepers. It works, but I was walking back home in the dark with my phone out as a flashlight. On my street there is a limited amount of street lights on the street. Though it was still relatively a safe neighborhood, strictly middle class. I figured no one else would be out. I was about 3 houses away from mine when I look over and I saw 2 figures on a porch talking to a man who was shaking his head and refusing to open the screen door. I stepped cautiously at the end of the driveway, holding my phone out ready to either help or call 911. Because I had no idea what's happening, and I could only think that maybe these 2 people were harassing the man, who looked startled and angry. Now, I by no means would have been able to help. I am 5'6" and roughly 130 pounds. I have no fighting skills, but I felt like maybe my large hoodie made me look bigger, rougher, so I stood there watching them with caution. Then, when I heard the voices, 2 kids, it sounded like, I stepped forward again. Curiosity at this point was pumping in my veins as I involuntarily moved forward. I kept walking. I was halfway up the driveway and illuminated by the porch light so he could see me and I could see him. I just stood there watching. "Please let us in. We need to call our mom. Please, you have to let us in," is what the voice said. The voice showed no sense of fear, just confidence mingled with an urgency. I stood there with chills running up and down my spine and unable to move as I tried to make sense of the situation. From a normal point of view, it would look like as if a grown man was refusing the 2 children the help that they needed late at night. Heartless man, helpless children. But the sense of dread at that moment filled my senses. It just didn't make sense. Why would this man look so afraid? Why? I finally cleared my throat, figuring maybe, just maybe, if this man wouldn't help the kids, or if the man needed help, I could still do something. The man looked up, and the kids turned around. The man looked even more afraid. He, at this point, let out a yelp and slammed his door, making me jump. The kids looked at me, and I looked straight at them, every instinct telling me to make a run for it. I was almost home, and I knew for a fact that my dad left the door unlocked for me. The kids came closer, becoming more seeable in the light. That's when I realized they had, white in their eyes. It just looked black. They slowly came toward me, not asking me anything about help, but looking slightly confused as I felt. I felt so stupid saying this, but I didn't run. I wanted to, but I was compelled to stay until the taller child was in front of me. He was only a few inches shorter than me, and I glanced down at him in a startled moment that he stared back up at me. "We have to use a phone," he said finally. His voice was eloquent, but if I could describe it like that, he knew what he wanted, and for being alone with a stranger at 1 a.m., he did not sound afraid. "I don't have one," I said back. This time I backed up, not wanting him that close, still unable to run. "Please, can we come in and use the phone? We need to get hold of our mother," he said. A lie. My instincts told me it was a lie, because it wasn't as if I could outrun them when they were in front of me now, and I stupidly hadn't run when I had the chance. So I lied. I shrugged. "I don't have a phone. I don't live on this street, or anywhere near here. I'm sorry." I knew my voice was shaking, but I couldn't help it as I slowly started backing up. "I'm in the same boat as you guys. My ride ditched me, and I'm just walking until I find a phone too. Maybe they would leave me alone if they figured I had nothing." Around this time, my brain reminded me of the black-eyed children, and I still refused to believe it. But then I also refused to help the children staring at me in the flesh. "Please help us, we need to be let in," the boy repeated. I shook my head. "Try another house, man, or a payphone. I can give you change that I have," I offered. "No, forget it." This time, this other one spoke up. "I'm sorry," I said. Finally, I wish I could help more. I knew that I looked younger than I appear, especially with this large hoodie on and large eyes. Maybe they figured I was only a teenager, and they both simply nodded, and they stared more. I have to go, I said. Good luck. With that, I turned and walked in the direction I came, not running. I just kept thinking they can smell fear. They can smell fear. They can. I walked, and I didn't reach for my phone. I just kept walking. I must have walked 3 or 4 blocks from my street when I turned around and headed back. Heart pounding, I walked up my street hesitantly, looking around for those damn kids, and not seeing anything until I reached that house again. The porch light was on, and the man was standing there with the door open and the screen door closed, holding a baseball bat and shaking. Our eyes met, and he jumped again, and I looked at him confident, confused until I realized what I looked like. One of those kids, given my height, and from the distinct blurry figure. Did the kids leave? I called out, hoping my voice would help him relax into knowing I was just another person. The ones you were with earlier? He shouted back. I stepped closer and he jumped back again. No, the ones who were outside that talked to me for a few minutes. They wanted to call their mom. Did they leave? Do you know if they left? I could hear my own voice trembling. I think that's what broke his trance of hatred on me. I watched them walk away earlier. He pointed in the direction from which I had walked. I feel uneasy. I won't let you in. I have to go home, I said. If I didn't go to my dad's often, so it would make sense he didn't recognize me, even in the dark. But I walked home, determined to make it. I got there safe, no freaky things. I locked the door. I sat in the kitchen for a long time, afraid to go to my room because there's a huge window, afraid to see what might be looking at me. The scary part is, last night there was a knock at the door, 11 or so. I didn't answer because my father asked me not to, said it was late and no one we wanted to talk with, but I couldn't help but feel uneasy about it. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, it was a lot of fun doing. Alright, well, stay savvy.